There comes a moment in life, quiet, heavy and deeply personal, when a woman looks around and realizes that the voices she depended on have gone silent, the hands she hoped would hold hers are no longer there, and the doors she knocked on have closed one by one. It is in that moment, my dear sisters and brothers, that the world may assume she is broken. But the heavens know something far greater is happening, because when a woman has no one but Allah, that is not her end, that is her beginning. You see, when everything is taken away, what remains is the truth. And the most powerful truth a believer can ever hold is that Allah never leaves. People may walk away without explanation. Plans may collapse without warning. Hearts may disappoint. And strength may feel like it has drained away. But Allah was there before the loss. He is there during the tears. And He remains long after the world has turned its back. In that solitude, something remarkable happens. The woman who once leaned on others learns to stand with tawakkul. The woman who once feared the future learns to trust the one who controls it. Her dua becomes more sincere, her tears more meaningful, her connection more real. Not because life became easy, but because her heart became anchored. This is not a story of weakness. This is the unveiling of strength. Strength that is not loud, not arrogant, not dependent on validation. Strength that whispers, Allah is enough for me. Strength that walks forward even when the path is unclear, because faith has taken the lead. And so today, as we reflect on this reality, remember, when a woman has no one but Allah, she has everything she truly needs. When reliance shifts fully from creation to the Creator, a profound transformation takes place within the heart of a woman. This shift does not happen overnight, nor does it come without pain. It is usually born from moments of disappointment, betrayal, loss, or deep loneliness times. When she realizes that people, no matter how sincere they seem, are limited, fragile, and incapable of carrying the weight of her soul. At first, this realization feels frightening. The heart resists it. The mind asks, if not them, then who? And it is precisely that faith gently answers, Allah. For much of life, reliance on people feels natural. We trust family, friends, spouses, communities, and systems. We expect understanding, protection, loyalty, and consistency. There is nothing inherently wrong with this, because Allah Himself created us as social beings. But the problem begins when reliance quietly turns into attachment, where hope rests more heavily on people than on the one who created them. When expectations grow so large that disappointment becomes inevitable. When the heart forgets that people are means, not sources. When those means are removed, the heart initially feels exposed. A woman may feel abandoned, unseen, unsupported. She may question her worth or wonder why things unfolded the way they did. But slowly, if she allows faith to guide her, she begins to recognize that what felt like abandonment was actually redirection. Allah was gently and sometimes firmly removing what the heart leaned on too heavily so that it could finally lean on Him. This shift to relying on Allah alone brings clarity. A woman begins to understand that people can promise but cannot guarantee. They can try but cannot decree. They can care but cannot control outcomes. Allah, however, promises and fulfills, decrees and sustains, knows the unseen, and manages every affair. When the heart internalizes this truth, fear begins to loosen its grip. Anxiety no longer dominates the future, because the future is no longer seen as random or cruel. It is seen as written by the most merciful. Relying on Allah does not mean life becomes free of hardship. On the contrary, challenges may still come, and sometimes they come in waves. But the difference lies in how the heart responds. Instead of panic, there is prayer. Instead of bitterness, there is patience. Instead of despair, there is hope. A woman who relies on Allah learns that even when she feels weak, Allah's strength is limitless. Even when she does not know what step to take next, Allah already knows the destination. This reliance builds inner strength that cannot be shaken by changing circumstances. Compliments no longer inflate the ego, and criticism no longer crushes the soul. Why? Because her worth is no longer measured by people's approval. It is anchored in her relationship with Allah. She understands that if Allah is pleased with her, no loss is truly a loss. And if Allah is displeased, no gain is truly a gain. There is also a deep sense of peace that comes with this reliance. Not the absence of problems, but the presence of calm within them. A calm that allows her to say, even through tears, Allah knows. A calm that trusts that delays are not denials, and that unanswered prayers are often being answered in ways the heart has not yet recognized. She learns to release control. And in that release, she finds relief. This reliance reshapes her dua. It becomes more honest, more vulnerable, more frequent. She speaks to Allah, not only in moments of desperation, but in moments of gratitude, confusion, and reflection. Allah becomes her refuge, not her last resort. And when Allah becomes the refuge, the heart is never truly homeless, no matter how lonely the world feels. Over time, this reliance nurtures resilience. A woman begins to rise after every fall with more wisdom than before. She does not rush healing, nor does she compare her journey to others. She understands that Allah's timing is precise, and His wisdom is beyond her vision. This understanding allows her to move forward without resentment, carrying lessons instead of wounds. Most beautifully, when reliance is placed fully on Allah, a woman discovers her true independence. Not independence from people in a harsh or dismissive way, but freedom from needing them to feel complete. She can love without losing herself, give without emptying her soul, and walk away when something threatens her faith or dignity. She knows that what is written for her will reach her, and what is not was never meant to stay. In the end, relying on Allah does not make a woman distant from the world. It makes her grounded within it. She engages with life, relationships, and responsibilities with a steady heart and clear intention. She understands that people may come and go, circumstances may change, and plans may collapse, but Allah remains constant. And in that constancy, she finds unshakable strength. So when reliance shifts from creation to the Creator, it is not a loss of support, it is the discovery of the greatest support that ever existed. A support that never weakens, never betrays, never sleeps, and never abandons. And for the woman who reaches this realization, her strength does not announce itself loudly, but it is felt deeply, carried quietly, and sustained by faith. Loneliness is often viewed as something to escape, something heavy and uncomfortable that must be filled with noise, people, or distractions. But there are moments in life when loneliness is not a punishment, it is an invitation from Allah for a woman to turn inward, to slow down, and to listen to what the heart has been avoiding. When familiar voices fade and companionship disappears, the silence can feel overwhelming at first. Within that silence lies a door to a deeper, more sincere relationship with Allah. For many women, life is spent giving emotionally, mentally, spiritually. They carry responsibilities, expectations, and unspoken burdens. They pour themselves into others, often neglecting their own spiritual needs. When loneliness arrives, it strips away those distractions. Suddenly, there is space. Space to think, space to reflect, space to feel. And while that space may initially echo with pain, it eventually becomes a place where faith can grow. In loneliness, a woman begins to confront her thoughts without filters. There is no one to impress, no one to explain herself to, no one to lean on emotionally. This can be frightening, but it is also liberating. Because in that raw state, she begins to speak to Allah with honesty rather than formality. Her it becomes less rehearsed and more real. She does not search for perfect words. She speaks from the weight of her heart. And Allah, who knows what is hidden, listens. Loneliness removes illusions. It reveals which relationships were genuine and which were conditional. It shows her where she placed her hope and where her expectations were too heavy for people to carry. This awareness can be painful, but it is also cleansing. It teaches her that not every absence is a loss, and not every ending is a failure. Some separations are protection, Some silences are mercy. As loneliness deepens faith, it also sharpens clarity. A woman begins to see herself beyond the role she played for others. She is no longer defined by who needs her or who validates her. She begins to ask deeper questions. Who am I when no one is watching? What does Allah want from me in this season? What parts of my heart need healing, not hiding? These questions lead her closer to purpose, not confusion. With time, loneliness nurtures emotional strength. A woman learns how to sit with her feelings instead of running from them. She learns patience, not as passive waiting, but as active trust. Trust that Allah sees her isolation, counts her tears, and understands her silence. She realizes that even when she feels unseen by the world, she is fully seen by the one who matters most. This period also refines her dependence. Instead of seeking comfort in constant companionship, she finds comfort in remembrance. Instead of filling the void with distractions, she fills it with prayer, reflection, and growth. The heart, once restless, begins to settle. Not because everything is resolved, but because it is surrendered. Loneliness also builds resilience in ways that constant support never could. A woman learns that she can survive difficult nights, unanswered questions, and long waits. She discovers strength. She did not know she had not because she became harder, but because she became more rooted. Rooted in faith, in self-awareness, and in trust in Allah's wisdom. Perhaps one of the most powerful outcomes of loneliness is discernment. A woman who has walked alone with Allah learns to recognize peace versus attachment, sincerity versus convenience. She becomes careful about who she allows into her life, not out of fear, but out of wisdom. She understands that not everyone deserves access to her heart, and that solitude is better than companionship that distances her from Allah. In this divine solitude, her identity is reshaped. She no longer fears being alone because she has tasted closeness with Allah. She understands that loneliness with Allah is never empty, while company without Him can be deeply hollow. This realization changes how she moves forward in life. She no longer rushes connections or clings to what is unstable. She walks with calm intention. Eventually, loneliness no longer feels like a wound. It becomes a chapter of growth, a sacred space where faith was strengthened and clarity was born. When people return, or when new people enter her life, she carries herself differently. She loves with balance, trusts with wisdom, and gives without losing herself. Because she knows that her foundation is no longer built on people, but on Allah. In this way, loneliness becomes a gift wrapped in difficulty. A gift that teaches a woman to listen to her soul, to deepen her faith, and to recognize that Allah's closeness is often felt most strongly when the world grows quiet. And once that closeness is known, loneliness is no longer feared, it is understood as a path that led her home. When worldly support fades, it can feel as though the ground beneath a woman's feet has been pulled away. The people she relied on, the systems she trusted, the plans she built her hopes around, suddenly they are no longer there. In those moments, fear often arrives first. Fear of the unknown, fear of failure, fear of being unable to cope. Yet beneath that fear, something far more powerful is quietly being awakened: spiritual resilience. This resilience is not loud or dramatic. It is steady, patient, and deeply rooted in faith. At first, the loss of support feels like weakness. A woman may question her capacity to move forward on her own. She may feel overwhelmed by responsibilities that once felt manageable when shared. But as days pass and she continues to stand, she begins to realize that the strength carrying her is not her own. It is Allah sustaining her through ways she cannot fully explain. Each day she survives becomes proof that she is being held, even if she feels alone. Spiritual resilience begins when she turns to Allah, not only for answers, but for endurance. She learns to ask, not just why is this happening, but how do I remain faithful through this? This shift in perspective changes everything. Instead of seeing hardship as a sign of abandonment, she begins to see it as a training of the soul. Allah is building her capacity, stretching her patience, and refining her trust. As worldly support disappears, reliance on Allah intensifies. Prayer becomes more frequent, not out of habit, but out of need. The Quran feels more personal, as though verses speak directly to her circumstances. She finds comfort in reminders that Allah is Al-Wakil, the one who manages all affairs, and as Samad, the one who is needed while needing none. These names are no longer abstract concepts, they become lived realities. This resilience teaches her to withstand emotional storms without collapsing. She learns that sadness does not mean failure, and tears do not mean weakness. Instead, she allows herself to feel while still holding on to hope. She understands that faith is not the absence of struggle, but the decision to remain connected to Allah despite it. This understanding gives her emotional depth and spiritual maturity. Over time, resilience reshapes her mindset. She no longer measures her stability by how much support she has from others. Instead, she measures it by how firmly her heart is anchored. When plans fall apart, she no longer panics the way she once did. She pauses, reflects, and turns to Allah. She knows that delays may be divine protection, and losses may be redirection towards something better. Spiritual resilience also brings discipline. A woman learns to show up for herself even when no one else does. She learns to maintain her prayers, her values, and her integrity without external encouragement. This self-accountability strengthens her character. She becomes consistent not because someone is watching, but because Allah is always watching. This awareness instills a quiet confidence that cannot be shaken. As resilience grows, fear begins to lose its power. The future no longer feels like a threat, even if it is uncertain. She understands that whatever awaits her has already been written with wisdom. This does not make her passive, rather, it makes her purposeful. She takes action while trusting the outcome to Allah. She works, plans, and strives, but her heart remains detached from results. One of the most profound aspects of spiritual resilience is acceptance, not resignation, but acceptance rooted in trust. A woman learns to accept what she cannot change without bitterness. She stops fighting reality and starts navigating it with faith. This acceptance brings peace, even in situations that remain unresolved. She understands that some answers will come later, and some will come in ways she may never fully understand in this life. Through resilience, her identity shifts. She no longer sees herself as someone who survived because she was lucky or because circumstances improved. She sees herself someone who survived because Allah carried her through. This realization fills her with gratitude rather than pride. Gratitude that humbles her and strengthens her connection to the one who never let her fall beyond what she could bear. When worldly support fades, a woman who develops spiritual resilience emerges transformed. She is not hardened by hardship, but refined by it. She carries wisdom in her words, calm in her presence, and faith in her heart. She understands that people may leave, systems may fail, and plans may change, but Allah remains constant. And in that constancy, she finds the strength to continue no matter what lies ahead. When a woman reaches a point where she feels abandoned, overlooked, or forgotten by the world, something extraordinary can occur within her heart. These are often the moments when Allah's closeness is felt most intensely. Not because Allah suddenly draws nearer, He has always been near, but because the noise of the world quiets enough for her to finally sense Him. When distractions fall away and external support weakens, the heart becomes more receptive to divine presence. In times of ease, it is easy to feel self-sufficient. Life moves quickly, filled with plans, conversations, and constant stimulation. Allah is remembered, but often in passing. However, in hardship, remembrance becomes essential. When a woman finds herself with nowhere to turn, her heart instinctively turns upward. In the stillness of late nights and silent tears, she discovers a form of closeness that cannot be replicated in comfort. This closeness is not always dramatic. It does not always come with immediate relief or sudden answers. Sometimes it manifests as calm in the midst of chaos. Other times, It appears as a subtle reassurance that things will not always be this way. A woman may not see the full picture, but she feels held. She feels that her pain is not meaningless, that her struggle is known, and that her endurance is valued. Moments of abandonment strip away false security. When people step back or circumstances collapse, illusions of control dissolve. This can be terrifying, but it also opens the door to true dependence on Allah. A woman realizes that while people may fail to show up consistently, Allah never withdraws His care. He witnesses every tear, hears every unspoken prayer, and understands every fear that words cannot express. In this space of vulnerability, her relationship with Allah deepens. She speaks to Him with honesty, not polished phrases. She complains, hopes, asks, and surrenders. She learns that Allah is not offended by her weakness, rather He invites it. This realization transforms her understanding of worship. Worship becomes less about perfection and more about presence. Less about appearance and more about sincerity. Feeling Allah's closeness during hardship reshapes how a woman views her pain. Suffering no longer feels like a sign of rejection, but a means of connection. She begins to see that Allah draws His servants closer through trials, not to break them, but to refine them. The heart that turns to Allah in pain often emerges softer, wiser, and more compassionate. This closeness also brings reassurance. Even when answers are delayed, there is comfort in knowing that Allah's wisdom surpasses her understanding. A woman may not know why certain doors closed or why certain prayers seem unanswered, but she trusts that Allah's plan is rooted in mercy. This trust does not erase grief, but it prevents despair from taking over. As she continues to feel Allah's nearness, fear begins to ease. The fear of being alone, of being unloved, of being forgotten loses its grip. She understands that if Allah is with her, she is never truly alone. This realization changes the way she carries herself. She walks with quiet confidence, knowing that her worth is affirmed by the one who created her. This divine closeness also encourages patience, not the kind that suppresses emotion, but the kind that allows healing to unfold naturally. A woman learns to wait without bitterness, to hope without desperation, and to trust without conditions. She understands that Allah's timing is precise, even when it feels slow. Over time, these moments of closeness leave lasting imprints on her soul. Even when life becomes easier again, she remembers what it felt like to rely entirely on Allah. She guards that connection carefully, knowing how easily it can be overshadowed by comfort. Her prayers remain sincere, her gratitude deep, and her humility intact. In the end, hardship becomes the place where faith matured. What once felt like abandonment becomes a chapter of intimacy with Allah. A woman realizes that the moments she thought she was most alone were, in fact, the moments she was being carried most closely. And this realization stays with her, shaping her faith long after the hardship has passed. When a woman becomes anchored in faith, her entire way of moving through the world begins to change. This anchoring does not come from comfort or ease, but from storms that tested her patience, sincerity, and trust. Faith, when it becomes the foundation rather than an accessory, produces a strength that is quiet yet unmistakable. It is not strength that seeks attention or recognition, but strength that carries dignity, balance, and unwavering reliance on Allah. This strength expresses itself first through dignity. A woman rooted in faith no longer begs for acceptance or chases validation. She understands that her honor comes from Allah, not from how others treat her. When she is overlooked, she does not shrink. When she is misunderstood, she does not feel compelled to explain herself to everyone. Her sense of self is stable because it is not dependent on shifting opinions. This dignity allows her to walk away from what harms her soul without bitterness or arrogance. Patience becomes a defining feature of her strength. Not passive patience that waits helplessly, but active patience that continues to strive while trusting Allah's decree. She understands that life will not always unfold according to her plans, and she no longer measures success solely by outcomes. Instead, she measures it by sincerity, effort, and faithfulness to her values. Even when results are delayed or unseen, she remains steady, knowing that Allah rewards perseverance in ways far greater than immediate gratification. Her trust in Allah reshapes her response to uncertainty. Where others panic, she pauses. Where others despair, she reflects. This does not mean she is unaffected by hardship. It means she processes hardship through the lens of faith. She acknowledges her emotions without letting them control her decisions. Trust becomes her compass, guiding her through confusion without rushing her into regret. A woman anchored in faith also develops emotional balance. She is not hardened by life, nor is she easily shattered by it. She feels deeply, but she does not drown in her feelings. She allows herself to grieve losses, to feel disappointment, and to experience sadness, but she does so while holding on to hope. This balance makes her presence calming to others, because her strength is not chaotic, it is grounded. Her interactions with people reflect this inner anchoring. She loves without obsession, gives without depletion, and forgives without forgetting her boundaries. She understands that faith does not require tolerating harm or injustice. Instead, it gives her the courage to choose peace over attachment and principles over popularity. She knows when to speak and when silence is wiser. Her words carry intention because they come from a heart that is settled. Trust in Allah also grants her resilience in moments of failure. When she falls short, she does not drown in guilt or self-blame. She repents, learns, and rises again. She understands that growth is not linear, and that Allah's mercy is greater than her mistakes. This understanding prevents shame from paralyzing her and allows her to keep moving forward with humility. As her faith deepens, gratitude becomes natural. She notices blessings even in small things, a moment of calm, a lesson learned, a prayer answered in an unexpected way. Gratitude softens her heart and protects her from envy and resentment. She no longer compares her journey to others because she trusts that Allah's plan for her is uniquely designed with wisdom and care. This anchoring in faith also shapes her courage. She is willing to take steps forward even when the path is uncertain. She is willing to stand alone if that is what obedience to Allah requires. Her courage does not come from fearlessness but from faithfulness. She knows that obedience may be difficult, but it is never wasted. Over time, this strength becomes evident not through grand declarations, but through consistency. She shows up for her prayers, her responsibilities, and her growth. She remains gentle without being weak, firm without being harsh. Her life becomes a quiet testimony to what it means to trust Allah fully. In the end, a woman anchored in faith rises not by dominating others, but by mastering herself. Her dignity is intact, her patience is steady, and her trust is unshakable. She may not control every circumstance, but she controls her response to them. And in that control, guided by faith, lies a strength that the world cannot give and cannot take away.